And of course, we all became good friends. And Walt Merrick was always interested in my knowledge of electronics. He was amazed that I could fix electronic stuff. And when I got my pilot's license, Walt and me, we used to go flying over Tabor Mountain, looking at moose and stuff like that. And anyway, Walt had 3 kids, Janice and Shannon and Lauren. They're 3 kids, and they like to come over and listen to my hi-fi record player and listen to the Beatles and stuff like that. And so we grew up being really good friends I grew up being good friends with the kids, and Norma and Walt both. So anyway, one summer on Saturday, I'm sitting out there and it's not very busy, and I got a call on the radio from this guy and his wife and 2 kids, and they said they left Vanderhoof and they were headed towards Germanson Landing, and they said they knew where they were when they crossed over Stewart Lake, but they said they got lost and they didn't now know where they were. So I had this sort of routine worked out. The boss wanted us to do this kind of stuff, have some kind of routine worked out so we could ask them questions and figure out what's going on. So I said, well, I said something along these lines, I don't know exactly, but I said, well, how long has it been since you were lost? Oh, an hour or 2 or something like that. And I said, have you been flying in a straight line, or have you been going in circles looking for where you are? And she says, yeah, we've been going in circles trying to figure out where we are. And so he said, well, right now we're flying due south, 180 degrees due south. And I said, yeah, well, keep flying that heading, because eventually you'll cross Highway 16. And once you cross Highway 16, then you know where you are. Mm-hmm. You can just turn east and come back over Fort St. James. So anyway, I went and checked the upper winds forecast. And the upper winds forecast said that the winds were supposed to be coming not from 180, but from 120, or coming 120 degrees. So when I called him to tell him that, they didn't answer me, because something happened to the radio signal. It wasn't getting through. But there was a family doctor there flying in his expensive Helio Courier. I knew him. He's a doctor that I'd been to before. We sort of knew each other. And he's been listening to this conversation on his plane all along. So I asked him to call this couple and tell them that I think they should fly 120 degrees. So he did. And I could hear him talking to them, so I knew he got through. So then all of a sudden, the airport started to get busy. There was guys all over the place, so I had to pay attention to other pilots, and take care of what they needed, what they wanted. So it was quite a while before there was a lull in the business, and I called him on the radio, and he answered me, and I says, how you making out? He says, we're along the north shore of Stewart Lake. And I said, how did that happen? And he says, well, after you told us to fly 120 degrees, he said we were flying along 120 degrees for half an hour or so, and we saw this helicopter going by underneath of us. So he says, I called on all my channels, and finally I contacted the helicopter. And he says, I asked them where we were, And he says, well, you're just a few miles north of Stewart Lake. So instantly they knew exactly where they were, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they just, by the time I talked to him, they were already, they'd already gone along Stewart Lake and they'd been over to Fort St. James and they were actually headed south to Vanderhoof.
Hmm.
So by the time I talked to them, they were getting pretty close to home. So that's how that all turned out, Jerry.
So they never did end up in Germanson Landing, obviously.
No, they didn't land at Germanson Landing at all, honey. They went back to Vanderhoof where they started.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
They never did make it to Germanson Landing. And it turns out the guy had a heart problem. That's how he couldn't think straight, and that's how come he got confused.
Huh.
So later on, many years later, I'm retired. I'm living here in Quesnel, and I meet Janice. You know, the girl, the lady that was involved in the flight, and she says, she says about it. She says, we were flying to Germanson Landing once, and we got lost. And one of my coworkers' name was Ron Mingerink.
Mm-hmm.
Allie knows him very well. And she says, either you or Ron helped us find our way back. And I told her yesterday that was me. So many years later, I found out it was my next door neighbor
Wow.
that was involved.
Wow.
So I guess their little girls are pretty freaked out when they didn't know where they were.
Yeah, I bet.
So anyway, that's one of my stories.
Very good, Gerry.